Thank you so much, Ms. Wells. It is in fact 1 o'clock, and I will now open the Senate Judiciary Committee meeting on Tuesday, February 23rd. And we have one bill to hear today. Before we get to that, I will ask that our secretary please call the roll.
Chair Scheibel.
Here.
Vice Chair Cannizzaro.
Here.
Senator Orenshaw.
Here.
Senator Harris.
Here.
Senator Settlemyre.
Here.
Senator Hansen.
Here.
Senator Pickard.
I am here.
And I think that's everybody. Right, Madam Correct Secretary?
Thank you, that's all.
All right, thank you. And we also have staff present with us today. Mr. Guinan, if you would please put those on the record.
Chair Scheibel, this is Patrick Guinan, Committee Policy Analyst, and our legal counsel, Nick Anthony, and I are both present. Thanks.
Thank you. We will move straight into our first bill presentation, which is our only bill presentation today. We have Senator Keffer with us in the Senate Judiciary Committee, as well as Jennifer Noble and Matthew Lee. And I will turn it over to Senator Keffer whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chair Scheibel, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I appreciate the invitation today to present Senate Bill 113. As you indicated, I am joined by two individuals from the Washoe County District Attorney's Office to help me present this bill because, you know, they're lawyers and I'm not. So I'm going to start with a little bit of an overview, though, to talk about why I'm bringing the legislation. And then I'll turn it over to Ms. Noble to present some of the specifics. This is a bill that is primarily about the criminal intent element of arson. Wildfires have long been a problem in both Nevada and throughout many areas of the United States, and it's a growing problem. The area burned by wildfires in this country has quadrupled over the past 40 years. And while there are a lot of reasons for that, half of that increase, at least, is generally attributable to climate change. Hotter temperatures and decreased precipitation have made these potentially deadly events even more problematic in recent years. And we have felt them very acutely on the ground here in Nevada, particularly in my district, as we've all experienced. Unfortunately, some of these fires are the result of people violating the law by intentionally lighting incendiary devices in our dry, brushy landscape and then not alerting authorities to the growing blaze with sometimes devastating results. People can lose their homes or even their lives. Forests, vegetation, and wildlife suffer a lasting impact. Firefighters risk their lives and millions of dollars are spent in fire suppression efforts. And in fact, recent federal firefighting expenditures have averaged about $3 billion a year. In 2018 in particular, an individual used illegal fireworks in a dry, brushy area, and once a fire started, he fled the scene, not calling for help. The resulting blaze consumed approximately 51,000 acres near Pyramid Highway, affecting areas owned by UNR, the Bureau of Land Management, Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, and private citizens. More than 300 firefighters battled the blaze. 2 homes and 15 structures were lost, as well as several vehicles that were damaged or destroyed. Costs associated with the suppression of the Perry Fire, as it was called, were approximately $4.8 million, which fall on the shoulders of Nevada taxpayers through various reimbursement mechanisms. And that estimate does not include costs incurred by home and landowners. Recently, as a part of prosecution in this case, the Nevada Supreme Court opined that our current statutory structure requires that to prove any degree of arson, the state must prove that the arsonist had an evil intent to harm or injure. And the goal of this bill is to change Nevada's required criminal intent for arson to be consistent with some common law and the laws of many other jurisdictions neighboring us. To satisfy the intent elements, the state would have to show that the arsonist intended to do a wrongful act in starting the fire. And this change would be consistent with many other states, including our neighbor to the west in California, Mexico, Oklahoma, Michigan, Mississippi, and Florida, and others. This bill would seek to increase as well the penalties for the separate crime of destroying timber, crops, and vegetation under NRS 475-0400. and it increases the penalty depending on the amount of damage done to the land. Chair Scheibel and committee, I have the honor and privilege of representing the North Shore of Lake Tahoe and much of Mount Rose and the Mount Rose Highway, and I'm constantly afraid that that it's all going to go up, and doing so would result in damage that we would not be able to quantify easily, but billions of dollars that would be lost could never truly be recovered. And almost equally importantly, the ecological damage done to Lake Tahoe through the ash and soot draining into the lake would reverse decades of efforts to maintain lake clarity, and it would be a catastrophic event for our state, our region, and our natural environment. So this bill, I believe, is appropriate to try to de-incentivize or deter actions that can lead to catastrophic wildfire that could cause massive damage, not just personal and public property, but our ecosystem overall as well as lives. So I will, at this point, turn it over to Jennifer Noble to talk a little bit more specifically about the bill.
Thank you, Senator Keffer, and we want to thank her for working with us on this bill. For the record, my name is Jennifer Noble. I am a Chief Deputy District Attorney in the Washoe County District Attorney's Office. I also represent the Nevada District Attorneys Association. With me to help present the changes that we are seeking to make to the NRS is Matthew Lee. Mr. Lee is a Chief Deputy District Attorney in our office, and he prosecutes in the area of arson, among other areas. And so he'll help me answer any questions that you might have following my brief run through of the language that we're seeking to amend. Before I dive into the bill structure, I wanted to quickly provide just a overview of our arson statutes. I know some of you may not be familiar with them. Chapter 205 of the NRS outlines the degrees of arson, and there are 4 degrees, and it depends essentially on what the person sets fire to. So first degree arson, for example, that's a category B, 2 to 15 years. And that's where someone sets fire to somebody's house, a dwelling house, or occupied personal property. Second degree arson, B, 1 to 10. Third degree arson, that is where someone might set fire to shrubbery, crops, grass, vegetation that don't belong to that person. That's a category D, 1 to 4. Fourth degree arson, that's essentially attempted first or second degree arson, as I understand it, also a category D, 1 to 4. So we're looking at those sections of the NRS in this bill. Also, I want to mention we're seeking to amend NRS 475 and vegetation. So moving into section 1 of the bill, as Senator Keffer mentioned, what we're trying to do is change essentially the definition, or I'm sorry, the intent element of arson in Nevada to be consistent with the common law. Jurisdictions are split on this issue. There are a number of states, as Senator Keffer just mentioned, that follows sort of the common law general intent requirement for arson. But in Nevada, we didn't have a lot of case law on this issue in reference to our statutes, which are pretty similar to California's, but not identical. In a recent case, Rodonsky versus State, the Nevada Supreme Court clarified, however, that for us to prove that the fire was set willfully and maliciously, we have to show that at the time the person ignited the match or whatever they used to start the fire, that there was, quote, an evil intent to do harm or injure. This is a pretty high burden for us to meet from an intent perspective. So our first goal is to change that specific intent to conform with the other jurisdictions: California, Florida, Michigan, Mississippi, New Mexico, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Vermont, West Virginia, Louisiana, and I think some others. That's reflected in section 1 of the bill, where we seek to change the definition from, or just the definition of malice only as it applies to the crime of arson, not any other Nevada revised statutes, to a wish to vex, annoy, or injure another person, or an intent to do a wrongful act. And that language is taken from a specific California case. The second proposed change in section 2 of the bill is to adjust 475.040 to include, first of all, the destruction of structures, not only vegetation, etc., but also to adjust the value elements and the felony severity to be consistent with the property value amendments that were approved by the legislature last session during Assembly Bill 236. So we adjusted those felony levels to be commensurate with those property crimes from last session. And in some instances, because right now it's set at 5,000, the person may actually come in who commits this type of crime may be facing a lesser felony depending on the amount of structure that's destroyed. So what we've done is for $25,000 or more, we've kept a category B, 5,000 to 25,000, that'd be a category C felony, and 1,200 to 5,000 category, 1,200 to 5,000 a category D felony. And then if it's 1,200 or less, that's a misdemeanor. In discussing these changes, I would like to make this committee aware, just remind you that this legislation wouldn't change the eligibility of persons charged with arson to enter diversion courts, mental health court, drug court, whatever might be appropriate, because we do know, we are mindful that often arson cases are connected to somebody who's got a mental health condition that needs to be addressed. However, there are some folks who set fire to our lands who engage in really irresponsible conduct that they should know will result in this type of devastation that was described earlier, and they don't have a mental health issue. But either way, changing the intent element helps us get those folks into diversion court that need it, and helps us hold accountable in a jury trial, perhaps, those folks who certainly engaged in the conduct without any sort of excuse or mitigating circumstance. So having described that, I would now thank you for your time, and Mr. Lee and I are here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I have a few questions. I see members of the committee have a few questions. I will go to Senator Harris first.
Oh, thank you so much, Chair Scheibel. I have a couple of questions, and I'll just throw them at you at once because I know you can handle it. The first is related to structure, and I'm wondering why the term property doesn't already kind of cover that. And then the second question is related to the new kind of categorization of felonies that we're implementing here. Why did we make the choice to delineate the felonies here, or I'm sorry, delineate the kind of new punishments here, as opposed to amending 193.155 and keeping that reference?
Thank you for the question, Senator Harris. So the first part of your question, I believe, had to do with why did we add that word?
And if you could just put your name on the record.
And it's my understanding, thank you, Chair, Jennifer Noble, for the record. It's my understanding that we included the word structure, so that could be like a shed, something on the property, because as interpreted, and Mr. Lee may want to jump in, I don't know, but as currently interpreted, it was just the land itself, because that statute specifically is talking about timber, crops, and vegetation. So that was the reason for the addition of structures. Additionally, the structures are a part of the cost associated with the damage that's caused by arson. In response to your second question, it's a great question, as usual, and as usual, you may have stumped me a bit, but we were thinking that really the category of the crime, because this is a crime that destroys property, should be really analogized to our other property crimes, our stolen property crimes, destruction of property crimes, I think check-related crimes, parts that we worked on last session in Assembly Bill 236. That just made sense to us, and so that's why we chose to draft it that way.
Okay, thank you. I would just note, I think 193.155 is all about the penalty for public offenses proportionate to the value of property affected. So, you may want to consider also making amendments there if you feel that that is necessary. And then I just also wanted to note that it seems like we've lost the ability now to fine anyone when the loss is under 25 and we jump straight to a misdemeanor, as well as getting rid of the option of a gross misdemeanor. So we will go from a misdemeanor straight to a category D felony. I'd encourage you guys to think about maybe putting another intermediate step in between there.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. I'll go next to Senator Settlemyre.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, it takes me a little while to get off my mute button. I appreciate the intent of the bill. I know there were several situations in the past in Northern Nevada, sadly, where people's careless, reckless actions were causing fires, and then there was no ability to go after them because they were able to get off in court. So I appreciate the intent of the bill. I agree with my previous colleague about maybe an intermediate step between the misdemeanor and the felony, because again, there's not much variance there. It seems that we're not giving the Judicial Department much options in that respect. I wanted to hit more though on the definition of malice and try to see where you've got that, because in reading Black's Law Dictionary, it seems that we'd go with a reckless disregard of the law or a person's legal rights. Wouldn't that be a little bit simpler terminology rather than getting into the discussion of vexing and annoying and injuring another person? And I was just kind of curious where the definition came about of maliciously, what state you borrowed that from, or if there, what thought process went into that.
Thank you for the question, Senator. Senator Settlemyre, as currently in the bill, was taken from People versus Atkins, which is a California case from 2001. The same definition can be found in other places in California law. But essentially, we had our Nevada Supreme Court tell us that it's currently written, we have to show specifically an evil intent. And that's something that can be difficult to do when you're just got circumstance that we had. The Black's Law Dictionary definition is always one to look at, but in looking at all the common law jurisdictions that I was able to research in working on that particular Supreme Court case, the definitions were similar in those common law jurisdictions where we have a general intent crime. And so that's why that specific language was selected with respect to the intent element.
Appreciate that, and thank you, Chair, for letting me ask that question. I still feel there might be a little bit better definition maybe we could find of maliciously, maybe borrowing it from other statutes or something of that nature. Thank you.
Thank you. I will move next to Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Jennifer. Great to see you as always. Question, the evil intent argument, okay? In this case, now the Perry fire actually occurred in my district. And I don't know how this guy was prosecuted, but in my mind, if somebody is reckless and irresponsible with fireworks, would that in fact be considered, or should it be considered, evil? Okay, because really what we're doing here is going back and saying, dang, if we would have had a little better, broader definition, we could have really nailed this guy. What was he charged for, and what penalties did he pay for his reckless use of fireworks?
Thank you for the question, Senator Hansen. It's nice to see you too, Jennifer Noble, for the record. First, the Supreme Court case, actually in an interlocutory appeal on that specific case, on Mr. Radonsky's case, explained what evil intent meant. And it wasn't simply doing something, reckless or stupid that caused all this damage, something that you're not supposed to be doing, but you're doing it anyway. That wouldn't fit necessarily the evil intent element, or it's tougher to prove that to a jury. However, it's my understanding that case is still pending, and Mr. Lee is actually the prosecutor, so he may be able to add some comments that might help answer your question.
Please, yeah, I'm just kind of curious because, if we're going to change the statute based on this one law, I'm kind of curious as to what the actual outcome was in the existing law. It sounds like it may be still in court, though. Yeah, if Mr. Lee could elaborate, I would appreciate it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Matt Lee, for the record. Senator Hansen, that case is still pending right now, and so I don't want to get into too many details of it, but Mr. Radomski was charged with 2 counts of first-degree arson, a count of third-degree arson, another count of third-degree arson, and then lastly, the crime of the gross negligence, which we see in Chapter 475, which is a part of this. And so, with the Supreme Court decision requiring that evil intent as defined by malicious, let's just say it hurts anyways. Further efforts to prosecute these types of cases in the future, because not only do we have to show these reckless acts, lighting, say, fireworks, firecrackers, whatever they may be in a dry brush in July when conditions are, let's say, perfect for such fires to take off. The definition of malice that we currently have as defined by the Supreme Court now requires us to show that the intent was not just to be careless or reckless, but actually cause the harm. So the resulting fire. So it's not enough just to show that he was lighting firecrackers under these terrible conditions. We'd have to show that he intended to actually start such a fire, such as the Perry fire.
Well, honestly, that seems kind of reasonable to me, that the way it is currently structured. I hate to rain on the parade there a little bit, but the guy didn't have evil intent. He was out there, he was irresponsible. Now, let me throw a hypothetical that one of our colleagues mentioned earlier today, not during this hearing, but during our caucus meeting. What if you have a catalytic converter on your car that you know is not functioning properly, and you drive through cheatgrass and cause a fire? You knew in advance that there was something wrong with it. Could that be considered evil intent if we passed this law?
Jennifer Noble, for the record, I don't believe so. No, Senator.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure, because the firecracker example to me, I mean, yeah, careless, irresponsible, remarkable degrees of damage, but should it be considered an evil intent? It's something that I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but we'll hear the rest of the testimony and see what everybody else thinks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Madam Chair, if I may just briefly respond to Senator Hansen's last comment. Thank you. Jennifer Noble, for the record. So actually, Senator Hansen, what we're trying to do is not necessarily characterize that as malicious, but in order to hold somebody responsible under any degree of arson, that's what the Supreme Court is requiring. And so what we're trying to do is move from that specific intent requirement to a more general intent requirement used by the other jurisdictions. That makes it easier to hold people responsible when we have catastrophic arson events like this.
All right, thank you. I will move next to Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel, and thank you to Senator Keffer for bringing the bill. I appreciate the intent, and I appreciate the work we've done in the past on trying to, prevent forest fires. And what a champion you are on those issues, and thank you to Chief Deputy Noble. I know we've worked together on legislation in the past. A couple of questions I have, and some of the scenarios that others have talked to me about, and I know one of them started a forest fire a couple of years ago here in northern Nevada, where a fellow was out target shooting, and I don't know if he was legally or illegally target shooting, but for the purposes of argument, if he'd been illegally target shooting out somewhere and that caused a fire, he hadn't intended to cause a fire on any land, but he, let's say, was illegally target shooting. Under current law, with the current criminal penalties, the court can still order restitution for whatever damage that does. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, Senator Orenshaw. Jennifer Noble, for the record. However, I might want to see if Mr. Lee has anything to add on that, because I believe for the crime of arson, there actually has to be some sort of incendiary component to it, some sort of lighting by the person.
So thank you, Matt Lee, for the record. Currently, such as target shooting, legally or illegally, sometimes those do create a spark that can cause a fire. However, I can't imagine how I could make that an arson case. The recoupment of costs for the suppression efforts and investigation are only available under NRS 205.034 for an arson charge itself. And so as it stands right now, someone target shooting that caused the fire, there may be some, depending on what a charge is, such as a failure to extinguish a fire, which is a misdemeanor, there may be restitution for any damage done, but certainly not to recoup suppression and investigation costs. Oftentimes those are the larger costs than even homes burning down.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, Senator Pickard.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel. I also appreciate the bill. I think we're heading in the right direction if we're trying to hold people accountable for catastrophic loss due to idiotic behavior, even if they don't intend to burn somebody's house down. If they should have known that they're lighting a fire in a particular area is likely to result in that sort of destruction, I think we ought to hold them accountable. I'm a little perplexed, though, as I read, it's specifically NRS 193.0175. It looks like this language was lifted right from our statute on malice, because it says malice and maliciously import an evil intent which are designed to vex, annoy, or injure another person. So all this is looking to do is removing the evil intent piece, which is what, as I read the State v. Second District case, what they were kind of honing in on. In fact, I thought it was interesting that the court said that we agree that the state lacks an adequate remedy at law in this case. I understand that you guys are kind of in a gap where we need to fix that. But my concern is by changing the definition of maliciousness to all arson, as I understood the statutory scheme, the crime of arson is different from a property crime to the extent that arson has an intent to do damage to a structure, to someone's home, down to property. And it's a more serious crime than destruction of private property. And so won't this change make arson a more inclusive crime, that now we're moving from the specific intent to burn somebody's house down to a careless act where maybe they should have known that it would result in the destruction? Doesn't this significantly broaden the scope of who's now going to be caught up in this net?
Jennifer Noble, for the record, thank you for the question, Senator Pickard. A couple of comments and trying to answer your question. First of all, it had to do, although we have the word malicious, and there is part of that definition that talks about a wish to vex, annoy, or injure another person in Nevada. There's also the evil intent, right, that's required by the Nevada Supreme Court as they interpret our statutes. But the term maliciously is actually used in a lot of these common law states, but it has a little bit of a different meaning. So we'd still have to show either that they were trying to, vex, annoy, or injure another person. In other words, I'm going to burn down or set a fire in my neighbor's yard to, make him mad. Or we also have changed the definition to include an intent to do a wrongful act. In other words, an unlawful act. So I have fireworks. I know I'm not supposed to light them right here. I know that's against the law. I'm going to do it anyway. And then I'm going to, my actions are going to cause, 50,000 acres worth of damage. So it would include those type of folks, yes. But I think in order to incentivize people to stop engaging in this type of behavior, this change is necessary.
All right, I guess I would think that the better approach might be to enhance or create a new statute regarding this rather than making all arson more inclusive, particularly since you know, we're talking about putting people away for a long time. I think that might be a little excessive. Anyway, I'll let it go at that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course, I'm going to go to Senator Cannizzaro next.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel. And I appreciate you all being here and asking questions. And I will say this one is probably in the same vein as some of my, but I thought maybe if I am eloquent enough to phrase it a little differently, that maybe we can kind of answer the question. I don't know if I will be successful with that. So the biggest thing that I see in these definitions, in how we would typically define or have to prove maliciously versus how we would have to do that if it were under this bill for the wish to vex, annoy, or injure another person or intent to do a wrongful act, seems to be around this idea of an evil intent, which I guess the first question is that evil intent, as I understand it, and I'll just ask you, Ms. Noble or Mr. Lee, that evil intent seems to pertain specifically to the specific intent to do harm, to cause the harm that results. Is that correct?
Jennifer Noble, for the record, yes. Vice Chair Cannizzaro.
And so because
that's my understanding.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sort of froze on my end. And because we're removing that piece of it, I think where everyone's hesitation seems to be that removing that starts to feel like if someone was doing something that they never intended to cause harm, but that harm nonetheless results, that we are now sort of adding that to the punishment. And can you talk just a little bit about what it would mean from a practical circumstance? And I know we've heard a few hypotheticals to remove something like needing to show an evil intent.
Well, thank you for the question, Jennifer Noble, for the record, to Vice Chair Cannizzaro. What we're trying to do essentially is, you know, there are things that happen, right? You could have something occur with your vehicle or a generator that's an accident, and now all of a sudden we've got a fire and it's catastrophic, etc. But I mean, most Nevadans, if you grow up here, you know that there are certain areas where you can't be using fireworks, you can't be lighting, you know, I think the law, and it's against the law because it's dangerous. So if you go in there and you violate a law, and this is the result, I think people are on notice that you're not supposed to be doing that. And one comparison in discussions that I've had with others is to the DUI statute. For example, when you drive under the influence of alcohol, you know that that's illegal. You know you're not allowed to do that. Now the consequence for that crime could vary, right? Because you could get lucky, get back to your house and not kill anybody. You could get pulled over, not kill anybody and get a misdemeanor, or you could kill a family of 4. And now you're looking at a felony DUI causing death charge. So it really depends, but the important part is that you made that first decision to violate a law, to do a wrongful act, and the consequence could vary. But the reason that we treat that crime that way is because we know of the potential consequence. And so I think, you know, as we're discussing this, I think it's okay to look at different ways to perhaps word this, but requiring the state to prove a specific evil intent for each of the, when we're trying to protect the community, when we're trying to protect our lands from this type of behavior that has catastrophic effects, when people are violating the law with no regard for what the consequences might be, and then not even trying to ameliorate anything by calling 911, they should be held accountable, and it should be easier for us to prove arson at trial.
I think for kind of clearing up some of that outside the context of hypotheticals. So would this allow for prosecution then for accidental incidents, or would it require an illegal act when we say wrongful act?
In drafting that, I believe my intent or my thinking, or in requesting that language, was essentially an illegal act, an act that violates the law. California uses the word wrongful act. I think that an illegal act could also be used, something that violates the law. Because we do want to get away from something that's a complete accident where there's no wrongdoing on the part of the person.
And I guess that's kind of what I think all of these are trying to get at, is whether this would punish something that was merely accidental. But the way that I read this, it would in some instances expand liability for folks who are engaging in an illegal act that causes a destructive fire.
That's correct. Jennifer Noble for the record.
Thank you, and thank you.
Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the second question. And again, I appreciate the intent of the sponsor, but looking back historically, when we've looked at increasing penalties, enhancing penalties, we haven't always been able to take that route to solve societal problems. And here I am concerned about expanding this net and having more people punished as felons who maybe didn't have that intent towards causing a fire. And one scenario that was broached to me before the hearing, and I don't know if this is how the bill would work out in reality or not, but if someone buys an illegal firework and they shoot it off and it hits my shed and the shed catches fire and burns down the shed, that they would be treated the same as if someone poured gasoline on my shed and lit a match because they wanted to burn down the shed. The way the bill is written, both people would be treated the same. The one person obviously broke the law, lit an illegal firework, but probably didn't intend to cause a fire, but whereas the other one clearly did intend to cause a fire and burn down the property. And I think that's the concern I have. But I hope that the district attorney's office will work with all the other interested stakeholders and maybe look at common ground.
All right. I also have a few questions for our bill sponsors and our subject matter experts. And like my colleagues have said, I also appreciate that we are facing problems with fires that are started by wrong actors or bad actors that are not necessarily intentional, but are wrongful nonetheless. And I understand why we'd want to change from a general intent or from a specific intent crime to a general intent crime. My question stems around the mechanism that you've chosen, because if I'm understanding it correctly, basically, there are a number of different ways that we could make arson a general intent crime instead of a specific intent crime. The strategy or the mechanism that this bill takes is to keep the word maliciously in the statute in 205.010 through 205.025, keep maliciously exactly where it is, and then add this definition of maliciously that includes the intent to do any other wrongful act. And so I have a series of 3 questions that just seem to me like less cumbersome ways to do the same thing, but I'm wondering what I'm missing. And so the first one is, why don't we utilize the language that's used in the breaking and injuring or tampering with the motor vehicle statute, 206.310, which uses willful or malicious instead of willful and malicious.
Jennifer Noble for the record. In reviewing the Radonsky case and the Supreme Court jurisprudence, that might be an option to get us to the same spot in a way that makes more sense to the committee.
Okay. And then my other question was why we're using the term wrongful instead of unlawful. either in the definition or putting into 205.010 through 0.025, a person who willfully or unlawfully sets fire to, and then continue the statute. I think that would also create a general intent crime without then having definitions of malicious that are different for fire setting versus slashing tires of a car versus placing graffiti on an electric box. Those are the other places that I think we use the term malicious. Would that, am I missing something with willful or unlawfully sets fire?
Jennifer Noble, for the record, no, Chair, I don't think you're missing anything. And originally looking at this language, the intent was sort of take it straight from the other common law jurisdictions, but there may be, and it sounds like there may well be more than one way to thread that needle. So if you want to take perhaps the word malicious out of it altogether and change it to willfully or unlawfully, I think that may be, and of course this is Senator Keffer's bill, but I think that may be able to get us toward our goal of holding people more accountable in these instances.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to explore those options, and I appreciate your responsiveness. I don't see any other questions from members of the committee. So I will close the presentation. Thank you all so much, and open this up for testimony in support of SB 113.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on SB 113, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in support on SB 113, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits 721, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Once again, caller with the last three digits 721, please press *6 now to unmute yourself, then slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yes, this is Todd Inglesby, Todd, last name Ingalsb as in boy, EE. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Todd Inglesby, representing the professional firefighters of Nevada. We want to support SB 113. We would like to thank Senator Keffer and Jennifer Noble for bringing this bill forward. As Senator Keffer said in his presentation, we have seen the impact of these fires over the past few years firsthand. As we increase our urban interface and more people are calling these areas home, the risks are becoming even more dangerous and the cost greater. These fires have a huge economic impact, an environmental impact, and our members have seen firsthand the devastation and destruction these fires leave behind. We have also lost brothers and sisters fighting these fires. I feel this bill could close some existing loopholes in our current statute. I want to thank the chair and committee members for your time and your consideration on this matter. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you, caller. Caller with the last three digits 247, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, this is Will Adler, Willadler. I'm with Silver State Government Relations, representing Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe wishes to speak in support of SB 113. Pyramid Lake Tribe suffered many structures lost and thousands of acres burned in the Perry fire that was mentioned earlier. To Senate Bill 113, arson should be addressed as a crime that it is. Please support 113 to reestablish arson as a viable and chargeable crime in the state of Nevada. Without the deterrent of arson, Pyramid Lake believes that Nevada will not have the proper deterrence on the books to prevent future reckless acts of fire in our arid state. because of their personal, participation in the Perry fire and the losses that they had there. It is sort of a personal issue to them when the Supreme Court case did come down. And then hearing the arguments today, I don't think it's the opinion of Pyramid Lake that it has to be a felony and or some other, misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor, but it does have to be a crime that's chargeable in the state that can be stuck to somebody who did create a mass destruction act via an act of arson. So thank you. And again, please support Senate Bill 113. Appreciate it.
Thank you, caller. If you have recently just joined us, we are currently on support testimony on SB 113. To give support testimony, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. And Chair, at this time, there is no more callers to give support.
All right, there being nobody else wishing to give testimony in support of SB 113.
I'm sorry, Chair. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Chair, I apologize. We just had someone raise their hand.
No problem. Let's go ahead and hear their testimony.
Alrighty, thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits, 344. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Once again, caller with the last 3 digits of 344. Please press star 6 now, then slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and you may begin. And Chair, it looks like that caller is unresponsive. I do apologize for the interruption.
That's okay. We all get stage fright sometimes. So we will close out the support testimony on SB 113 and move to opposition testimony on SB 113.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel. To testify in opposition on SB 113, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in opposition on SB 113, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 344. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Moving on, caller with the last 3 digits, 165. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is David Westbrook, David Westbrook. I'm a Chief Deputy PD speaking on behalf of the Nevada Attorneys for Criminal Justice. NACJ opposes SB 113 because it would needlessly expand criminal liability under Nevada's arson statutes and treat people with innocent motives as though they had malicious criminal intent. Fire is unpredictable. It can be set by accident and spread rapidly, which is why our arson statute was carefully written to require specific intent. The statute criminalizes the willful and malicious burning of property because lawmakers recognize that there is a difference between a man who burns down his house because he forgot a pot on the stove and a man who torches his own house for the insurance money. In short, there can be no accidental arsonists. But SB 113 would change that, and like the Perry fire itself, the result would be unintentionally devastating. If SB 113 passes, it will effectively criminalize unintentional and even unforeseeable acts that result in fire. It will do this by allowing prosecutors to use misdemeanor statutes, like laws against littering or creating a public nuisance, as a basis to charge felony arson. A tourist who didn't grow up in this area, who accidentally lets a campfire get out of control, could receive the same felony charge as a real arsonist who douses a campsite in gasoline because he wants to watch the forest burn. The catalytic converter point made earlier was a great example. If failing to fix that car falls under any misdemeanor statute, even traffic, then the driver can be charged with felony arson under SB 113. So can the guy shooting in the desert, by the way. It is any wrongful act, and that is the danger. None of us want to see tragedies like the Perry fire, but broadening our criminal laws and creating harsher prison sentences will do nothing to prevent them. It is logically impossible to deter someone. Yeah. I'm
Thank
sorry?
you. That's 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Caller with the last 3 digits, 588. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, this is Vinny Spottelson, Vinny Spotleson, calling from 89123. I'm calling in opposition to this bill as an environmentalist. I don't like when people associate protecting the environment with Big Brother. I'm worried that this won't actually prevent any fires because the people who do this stuff don't follow the legislature or obscure changes in NRS. What would actually help prevent these fires from getting catastrophic is more funding, I don't know, for maybe the Division of Forestry, but definitely more funding to remove invasive weeds and grasses that spread fires, and to continue fighting climate change by continuing to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels for transportation and electricity. So overall, I just think that we need less authoritarian governance that's just going to increase fines and jail time for people that, can't pay those fines anyway. And it doesn't solve the problem of the actual wildfires, which is what we're trying to get at. We're really trying to prevent these from happening. And I don't think this bill does anything to actually prevent them from happening. It just changes the law and makes the punishment after it happens more severe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, caller. Caller with the last 3 digits, 725. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, and thank you, Chair Scheibel and committee members. My name is Nick Shepak, Nickshepak, Policy and Program Associate with the ACLU of Nevada. We stand in opposition with our colleagues from the Defense Bar and echo their sentiments. The policy of the state has been to move away from arbitrarily establishing new Category B felonies. I myself grew up in Lake Tahoe and have seen firsthand how negligent use of fireworks, cigarettes, and one time a can of gasoline and live lizards can devastate a community, destroy homes, cancel sports seasons for kids, and scar landscapes for decades. I would be lying if I said that as a kid in the Tahoe Basin, we never brought home fireworks from sports trips to Battle Mountain, or that we didn't gather around illegal fires in the woods in high school to enjoy the exploits of our new friend with a fake ID. We got lucky too many times, and I hope my future kids are much safer and more educated on the dangers than we were. What we did not know, and what most Nevadans are unaware of, is the level of felony or misdemeanor of any given crime, including arson that causes damage of more than $25,000, a concept completely foreign to any kid and most adults. Even as someone who works in the criminal justice field, I am often surprised to find out how certain crimes are categorized. The protection of our beautiful state and the forest my family call home is a noble venture, but this bill is not likely to deter the behavior it aims to address. This can be done in part through education of both local residents and visiting tourists. We find it hard to believe that people are setting wildfires through neglectful behavior because they are aware that the penalties are currently acceptable to them. We would love nothing more than to find ways to ensure the protection of our public lands and communities, but we cannot endorse the creation of new felonies. We do not believe this bill creates effective deterrence, but instead only punishments that the offending person will likely be unaware of until they are charged. For these reasons, we must oppose the bill, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you, caller. And with that, Chair Scheibel, there are no more callers to give opposition testimony at this time.
All right, thank you so much. Seeing as there is nobody else in the queue for opposition testimony, we will move to testimony in the neutral position on SB 113.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral on SB 113, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, to testify in neutral on SB 113, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 611. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. Chair, I have to ask a question. I hit *9 during the opposition, but for some reason the system didn't take it. May I be allowed to testify in opposition at this time?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to say a few things. This is John Pirro from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. SB 113 represents an old way of solving problems with the criminal code in Nevada that we moved away from last session with the passing of AB 236. As Senator Pickard said, this proposal would broaden to catch people without criminal intent. There are plenty of good wildfire policy bills that will become before this legislature, such as AB 100 and AB 139, which represent bipartisan efforts to try to curb the problems that wildfires present, because we all care about preserving the land that we live in. Proposing a change to malice for one type of case is a dangerous precedent to set. Again, with the diversion thing that Mrs. Noble said, I would say yes, mostly mentally ill people are charged with arson. However, diversion is not an option because people with mental illness that commit arson cannot go live at group homes due to the risk. So diversion is not an option for these people. And as Senator Pickard pointed out, that catalytic converter example, I would not put that past some prosecutorial minds. NRS 475.040 covers gross negligence. This bill is not a matter of good policy, and I'd ask this committee to not pass this bill. That concludes my testimony. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, caller. Caller with the last 3 digits, 318. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. This is Kendra Birchie, KendraBertschy. Thank you, Chair Scheibel and members of the Senate Judiciary. As you know, I'm the lobbyist for the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. I believe I will also have Mr. Don Petty, who is our Chief Appellate Deputy Public Defender, testify in opposition to this bill. But I just wanted to provide some brief remarks regarding why we are opposing this bill. The reason we are opposing this bill is not only is it increasing penalties, but I believe that it will actually have a more damaging impact on our communities, where it is providing a deterrent for people to notify law enforcement when they do set wildfires. As we've seen in Reno and Washoe County, and I'm sure also in Vegas and the surrounding Tahoe areas, if someone accidentally sets a fire due to target practice or kids with bonfires out in legal areas, they will be deterred from calling law enforcement to having the fires respond. And I believe that this would actually potentially have a greater, more catastrophic impact on our society. And so we are objecting for this reason. And I would just note that, as Mr. Pirro indicated, I've had clients with mental health issues who accidentally or who do set fire to a brush or to some land, and then it is very difficult in order to get them into that treatment when they are charged with arson, because it is considered a violent offense. So with that, I thank you so much for allowing me to testify. I appreciate it.
Thank you, caller. As a reminder, callers, we are currently on neutral testimony for SB 113. If you would like to give neutral testimony, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, we are on neutral testimony for SB. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Kyle. I was informed that there was apparently a technical glitch and there were some individuals wishing to testify in opposition who did not make it into the queue for opposition. So I will ask that we reopen opposition testimony. I think there may be somebody already in the queue. Do you show somebody in the queue, Mr. Kyle?
Yes, Chair Scheibel, I do have someone in the queue currently.
Okay, I think that person is planning to speak in opposition, and that's fine. They may go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Caller with the last 3 digits, 191. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin now.
Good afternoon. This is Dale Wade, Deputy Fire Chief with Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. I had a technical issue and was wanting to speak in support of Senate Bill 113. Would that be okay?
Yes, that would be fine. And I will ask the secretary to please reflect that this testimony is in the support position. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. And the Perry fire occurred within the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. And so that's one of the reasons that we are in support of this, as well as more clearly defining the intent of malicious. I think that some of the testimony that was heard of changing to willful or unlawfully is also another potential avenue for this. For Truckee Meadows Fire, one of the things that we had discussed was we would like to see number 4 in penalties of section 2 of this proposed bill be amended to gross misdemeanor rather than a misdemeanor, because this is for an act of gross negligence. That's all I have, and I thank you and the committee for the opportunity to speak and the consideration.
Thank you, caller. And Chair Scheibel, with that, there are no callers currently in the queue at this time.
All right. Due to our technical difficulties, I'm going to go through each category one more time very quickly, because I do also see that there are a couple of callers still on the line. If there's anybody else who missed support testimony, go ahead and hit *9 now.
And Chair, there is currently no one in the queue to give support testimony at this time.
Perfect. Then we will go briefly again to opposition testimony. If there is anybody who would like to give opposition testimony, go ahead and hit *9 now.
And Chair, at this time, there is no one in the queue for opposition testimony.
All right. And one more time, just in case if there is anybody wishing to give neutral testimony, please go ahead and press *9 now to be added to the queue.
And Chair, while we do have a handful of callers left, there is no one in the queue for neutral testimony at this time.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for your help, Mr. Kyle. Thank you, everybody, for your patience with that, and to everybody who provided their thoughts via testimony today, either in writing or on the phone. That concludes our hearing on SB 113. I will now close the hearing. Today, we do have a bill draft request for introduction. It is number 14-377. That is the next item on our agenda. So, pursuant to Senate Joint Standing Rule 14, committee members must vote to approve the drafting of legislative measures requested by the Senate Committee on Judiciary. Please remember, a vote in favor does not indicate your support for the bill, but merely allows these bills to be drafted. Today, I request the committee's approval of one bill draft. BDR 14-377 establishes provisions relating to conditions of release that prohibit the contact or attempted contact with certain persons. I see a hand from Senator Orenshaw. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Move introduction.
There is a motion from Senator Orenshaw to introduce the bill.
And I will second, Madam Chair.
There is a second from Senator Harris. And is there any discussion on the matter? I am not seeing any. So will the secretary please take a roll call vote? And as always, I will ask our members to answer with yes or no for clarity.
Vice Chair Canizaro.
Yes.
Senator Harris.
Yes.
Senator Orenshaw.
Yes.
Senator Settlemyre.
Yes.
Senator Hansen.
Yes.
Senator Pickard.
Yes.
Chair Scheibel.
Also yes. Thank you, everybody. With that, the motion passes. And we will move on to the last item on our agenda for today, which is public comment. Is there anybody wishing to give?
Thank you, Chair Scheibel. To give public comment at this time, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once again, callers, to give public comment at this time, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. And Chair, while the phone lines are open and working, I do have a few callers here that seem to be just listening as no one has entered the queue.
All right, I think we did plenty of queue entering exercises today, so I will trust that none of them are here for public comment. And that will conclude today's meeting. We do not have a meeting tomorrow. Enjoy a long lunch, and I will see you all on Thursday for our work session at 1 p.m. Our meeting is adjourned.